All right, I would like to call the Regional School Committee meeting to order. We'll be joined at some point by Lori Crisell, and we will begin with community comments. I don't believe we have anyone speaking in the seats, but we do have someone here at the table who would like to speak. Richard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to announce to the many millions who follow this show, this will be my last term on school committee. I will be stepping down in May, so run. It's a lot of fun, and your wisdom and so forth would be much appreciated. Yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll talk more about you leaving the committee, but for now, we'll just pretend that you're still here with us working, and we'll talk more later in the year. We'll turn it over to the administration for reports.
Scott, you want to start?
Calvin,
Okay, so some important middle school dates are on February 20th to the 24th is the winter vacations. That means no school. And then Friday, March 3rd is the quarter 3 midterm. And then we'd like to congratulate all who prepared and took part in the Eastern Junior District Music Festival on Saturday, January 28th. We're very proud of their dedication and efforts. We are also pleased to announce the 6 Dover-Sherborn students qualified to participate in the State Music Festival in March. Anna Davis, Jenna Eiton, Ashley Gong, Taylor Malinovsky, Jordan DeVillis, and Devin Patel. And then congratulations to Eric Yang, who placed 3rd out of about 160 students at the Math Counts competition on January 28th at the Meadowbrook School in Weston. Erica is qualified to complete at the state competition on March 4th.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. I just wanted to, there is a mistake later in the report. It said the team had finished 14th out of 20 teams. They were actually 5th. In the initial results they got the day of, they were told they were 14th, which both the advisors were surprised at, given some of the high scores in individuals. So they ended up 5th out of the 20 teams. And then 2 other events that happened in the month of January was the MLK Day celebration, which was fantastic with Mass League Poets. Started off in the morning, and then later in the day, Berkshire Hills School performed to culminate the day. It was just a fantastic event. And then the 15th annual Chocolate Cafe was held at the end of January, and that was a tremendous success as well for all of our musicians in the region. That's all I have.
No questions or comments? Great, thank you very much. Mr. Smith, Kelvin, you're free.
Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. At the high school, just a couple things. March 1st, we will have our annual blood drive at the high school. The student council members are actively working on that, do a great job each year. This past January 27th, as I highlighted in the report, we had another very successful freshman field trip, which we did a few years ago. We did another one, which was a great experience where kids are exposed to both the biology and the social studies curriculum, which was great. Aaliyah McFarland was just named the Daughters of the American Revolution recipient from Dover-Sherborn High School, which is fantastic. In your report, you have information, and I want to thank Tanya Gallagher and Jeff Parcells for putting together thorough information around concussion protocol, because as we know, that's a major topic across high schools, colleges, and professional sports. And I'm very, very pleased to see that we really are doing a lot of good work with regard to concussion protocol. I know that we're actually just working with producers of current football helmet, because they're actually going through a new rendition of what that helmet may look like. So we're certainly making great progress on that, and hopefully we reduce those concussions as far as we possibly can. And coming up in March, we have our spring musical, Pippin, which the rehearsals are going really well. The kids and Mr. Scott Walker work incredibly hard to produce a great show, and we look forward to that. And just this past Tuesday, Carly Blaze, one of our new art educators, and Hannah Wright, one of our other art educators, took a number of art students to Mass College of Art, where they met with a curator and they learned how to critique art. That curator came to the school and did some work prior to that with them, and then they were able to then go to Mass College of Art. So it really gave kids, I think, a greater sense of appreciation on how to critique art, look at their own art, and to examine art in the greater world. So some really neat opportunities for our students.
Thank you.
Can I just thank you to you and Jeff for putting together the concussion report. The request came from a community member who was inquiring around impact from, especially from football, as the Ivy Leagues and some of the youth programs have moved away from tackle.
Yeah.
And so it's beyond, and I assume that they'll continue to investigate both concussions and all the hits that aren't even concussions. So it's definitely something that we want to keep on our collective radar screens, that we can keep our kids as safe as possible.
Yeah, some of the equipment that I believe Dartmouth College has integrated involves these moving dummies. So instead of it being person to person, you're teaching proper technique, and you're also reducing the number of concussions. Interesting enough, concussions take place in games, but the higher percentages in practices, and that does make sense because you have more practices than you would games. So, their philosophy really is we're trying to maintain proper technique in any sport. And I can see it being instituted in hockey and in boys and girls lacrosse and in soccer. So we're pleased, and we'll continue to make sure that we stay out in front of it.
Awesome, thanks.
Thanks very much. Next is monthly financial report.
Thank you, Cornell. John will walk you through.
You got up so fast.
I know, are you ready?
Gotta wake up. So in your packet, you have your, the revenue report is January 31st, your status of appropriations as of January 31st, as well as the December 31st quarterly statement for the special revenue and revolving funds, which we will give you on a quarterly basis. So the last time you saw those funds was at year-end June 30th, so now you're seeing them as of December 31st. As far as revenues, we received our first of 2 payments for Chapter 71, so that's now reflected in the financials. We have posted all the athletic fees for the winter sports season, and we're continuing to receive parking from the juniors that pay on every month or every 2 months they pay. And so that money will continue to trickle in, and as you see, we're seeing a positive variance in that revenue line item. On the expense side, we do have a slight adjustment to the positive salary variance. It's up to $60,000 now. Part of that has come about because we do have a high school teacher who went out on maternity leave, is not coming back, so we have a long-term sub in her position. And during a certain period of time, she was fully encumbered as well as the sub. And so when that encumbrance was relieved, we had a larger variance than we initially thought. So that's a good thing to report. On the expenditure side, there's really nothing new to report on the expenditures. I did give you some information about how our maintenance and facilities accounts work, and give you an update on where we are with our reserve right now and sort of what we have encountered to date that we've had to use the reserve for. Any questions on the revenue or status appropriations?
Forgive me if I continue here, but I think that it goes to the question I wanted to ask, which is, now that we've had a couple of snow days, and clearly maintenance staff is heavily involved in getting the campus back to functioning, how does that figure in as the budget goes forward? And if they have to spend extra time doing that, does that just mean other work doesn't get done, or are we drawing money from other places?
So if they come in they're coming in, Chris Hendricks and his staff are coming in at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So we do incur overtime for our own personal staff to get the property ready. There are also the outside people, so one of his staff in the wintertime when there's not all the fields and grounds to take care of goes inside, but that's an extra body who can come out and help with the snow removal.
if we were to have a few more, would we then be looking at a dwindling line item that would need some attention?
No, because it's built into the overtime line item enough to cover multiple things. So what it may be doing is that we won't do as much overtime, I want to say voluntary overtime for like painting projects and stuff if we use too much in the winter, yeah. And in your financials, we encumber the $25,000 for snow removal. So we were already taking into account that we will, use a chunk of our maintenance contracted numbers for snow removal. So we haven't hit that yet, but that's holding a placeholder in our numbers.
Excellent, thank you.
On the special revenue revolving funds,
Before we move on to that.
Oh, yes, sorry.
So we've got, right now, 725,000 left in expenses, but not all of that clearly has been encumbered that will be used.
Right.
What's your best guess, given that this was the first year we were trying to come out at close to zero and not significant turnbacks?
So we've tried to encumber what we know, but there's a lot of day-to-day stuff that just happens.
Yeah,
So
no,
it hasn't been encumbered. So there is, we don't see any place where we're going, except already noted, where we're gonna be over budget, and that was just healthcare. Come at the end of February, we've been talking to all the administrators and Ralph himself about really sitting down and looking at where we stand and what we project, so that we can give you a better sense of that, but we'd like to get through a couple more weeks until we do that. So I can't give you a number of where we think we'll come in at this point in time, it's just too early.
Michael, for
Will
some,
we have that in place before we're voting on this year's budget, where we were basing our, forecast coming expenses on how well we did this year?
we can certainly have an estimate, and directly related to your question, for whatever reason, a couple of hours ago, I spent some time looking at the monthly financial report from a year ago. And at that time, the total expenditures line last year at this time was at $4,098,101. And so you'll see this year we're at the 726. So I'm not talking about salaries, but just
Yeah,
expenditures.
just the expenditures, yeah.
So what was interesting is there are basically 4 line items that we were not encumbering at this point last year. So those would be the transportation services. So a year ago, there was $299,000 still available. And we've encumbered all of the transportation services with the exception of athletics.
But that was because of the transportation reserve.
The reserve
The
fund.
250.
250 of that.
That's what that was,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because I thought we had.
Yeah,
for
we
some
do
reason.
encumber the bus.
Right,
So that was
okay.
because we
Yep.
encumbered some of it to the
Right.
transportation fund versus.
What we were not doing last year in terms of encumbrance was the utilities line. So there was $458,000 at this point last year. The active employee health insurance, again, we've encumbered those funds. At this point this year, last year we did not. That balance was at $1.227 million. And the long-term debt retirement, again, that gets paid near the end of the year, but we've already encumbered that this year.
Yeah.
So that was at 1.173 million. And then the same with the debt service line, which was 87,000
Yeah.
last year.
No, we're clearly doing a lot better job
Right.
of knowing where we're gonna come out. So, I guess, again, the interest level is because we worked hard to try to bring that number down to close to zero, and then we're basing next year's budget on how we are doing this year. If we still ended up being conservative in the budget, then the question is, would we need to roll that forward to next year? On the flip side, if turns out we're really spending faster, we just haven't had a sense of that yet.
Right, so the point I was going to make in the end was that when you take those line items, that adds up to about $3 million, a little more. So if you take that out of that $4 million, this time last year we were at $1 million, but we were also $100,000 higher on the salary piece. So if you take that difference and then factor in that out of that balance last year, we also provided $800,000, a little more at the end of the year, back to the towns. It suggests to me, in a very general sense, that where we are now, I think we're on target to close the year, certainly in the expenditures. You know, who knows, depending on what happens with some of these, you know, the maintenance reserve line, for example. Maybe we're clear sailing for the rest of the year, but pretty close. But we'll do some work. I think we can have an estimate for the next meeting. But again, you know, that would suggest there's still 4 months to go in the year. But we, you know, as we talked before, that is.
Right, so
our
we'd have
plan
something,
to do that.
my timeline would be to have something for your March 14th meeting. Because that gets us through February,
Right.
and gives us time to prepare something.
Yeah, but it's post votes and discussions with,
No, but 14th is when you're voting.
pardon?
We're certifying the budget, Michael, on the 28th as the high water mark.
So we'll have 2 more opportunities.
And we have our combined meeting March
The
1st,
next night.
2nd. So it just seems
The
like
next night, yeah.
it's in that, those are the nexus of conversations
If they
around-
find something.
around tying things up. It just seems like there's a lot of line items spread around where currently we don't anticipate spending 30, 40, 50% of that line item. I don't think that's likely, but it just seems like those are large percentages to not yet have a sense of how it'll be spent.
Right, and sometimes it's work that's done over one of the breaks. I know Anthony just, what's not reflected here is he just put a big PO in last week for work he's doing next week. That's going to finish off the technology supplement plan. So that's, if he puts those POs in as he is ready to do the work. So you're going to see some movement over the next month or so of things getting done, and so that number will shrink. And we can go and look at other accounts and make forecasts of where we are. In the guidance, a lot of that's the tutoring, which happened, you know, we just don't know where we're going to need tutoring services. So that's why it's too early to call on some of those.
So we can fine tune an estimate, but it's, just to be clear, it's still an estimate at that point, and subject to change.
And athletics too, for both transportation and, they show up in 2 places, they haven't encumbered their spring sports.
No, I understand
Yeah,
that.
so-
So
But that's
again,
where things that
like
will
this-
happen in the next,
Yeah, so
couple
things like
weeks.
utilities and the maintenance reserve and transportation, I recognize that, you know, those are pretty well thought out budgets to begin with. It's a lot of the nickel and dime things that add up that we don't, right now, appear to be on target to need to spend the full amount that was budgeted.
Right, some cases yes, and some cases no. So, any other questions on the revenues or expenditures? So just a quick highlight on your special revenue revolving funds. One idea I wanted to throw out there, on your capital plan, we talked about the carpeting and mud and using $20,000 from the mud gift. As I've been thinking about this and as I've been seeing the rental revenues come in from all the groups that use the Mudge Auditorium, I think one option the school committee can consider is splitting that 20 and pulling 10 from your building funds to cover the carpeting, because there are a lot of groups between the recitals and the other drama programs who use that as their performance center, that makes a lot of sense that to also maybe pull some money from the building fund. So something to think about when that sort of purchase comes into being. It's not being funded through capital, so when it comes, it'll be brought forward to the committee to decide.
Okay, so, what you said makes perfect sense, except I thought we had committed ourselves to spending much money on that. And if we don't spend the much money on that, I would just worry that we have made a commitment that we decided not to keep, and I think that maybe.
Well, no, remember, the gift was unrestricted. So that's, and
It
that
sits
was,
there.
and it was right there in front of us when we started thinking about recarpeting the mud. So that's why we said, well, why
So
don't
then
we
we
use?
find something else.
Yes, exactly, something else. Because I mainly bring it up because there were concerns that that might not be, it was not appropriate to sort of take all of that for that. But when you think about the rental revenues that do come in for, we just received, I think, 6,700 from Open Fields for the last event they were just here. So that's the thought process that it didn't fully have when we talked about it initially. That's still there as an option, I think, for you when that comes into play. You also, in the cafeteria, I included the participation report for you, so you can sort of see how they're doing. Yeah, they're definitely seeing some increase in participation on top of the price increase that went into effect last year. And if you look at the fund balance, it looks like it's going down, but one thing to take in consideration for the region's food service is that we do allocate Norfolk County retirement assessment to them. They pay that all in the summer. It's a big number for them, so it takes a little while for it to catch up. So it looks like they're having a decrease, but by the time you get to the end of the year, they will have an increase in fund balance.
So this is marginally better than, I mean, not marginally, it's better, it's probably 10% better than the last couple of years. What do we attribute this to?
The participation rate?
I'm sorry, yes, the
Yeah,
participation.
well, I think that the student groups have been working a lot with Janelle and sort of saying, what are your desires? What are you looking for? A lot of the fresher options that she's coming up with, the Tuesday pizza, where she sells extra slices at a pretty good margin, I think is helping that. But I think there's, the changes that have been made from the various groups that have been working with food services and Janelle, I think have been making an impact. Any other questions?
Thank you, Don.
And Don, just the last page was the gift.
Oh, the last page, oh wait, it's just the detail that we've been giving you so that you can keep in the forefront sort of some of the restricted gifts that
Right.
you have, that have come in, and you will see on there the, you haven't seen, but you did accept the gift for the sailboats. So that transaction is starting to occur. We've already paid a down payment on those.
Right.
And there'll be more money coming from the friends of the sailing group once the boats are delivered.
Can I ask a question about this as a general topic? Which is, I mean, I know some of these are spearheaded by the individual groups. Obviously, you know, the boosters run that show, Focal runs that show, whatever. But there are others that are individual things that keep coming up, and I'm not sure that there's anybody in-house who is sort of massaging those gifts and saying, you know, are they keeping track with?
Well, that was going to be my question, Richard. So you see anonymous family for special ed or assistive technology, or we've got the balance from 2012 with the math tablets. Right. Do we have a process to sort of review that, figure out how to spend it?
So I think we're getting better about actually looking at the report and seeing. So when items come up that we may not have money in the budget for, this is a place that we can look, so you guys can look and say, you know, we might be able to use this because it's restricted for that particular item. Some of these leftover balances probably, like we probably just need to tell Jim Burry that he's got some money, that he can buy something for the math department. So it's being more aggressive and just reaching out to these people and letting them know the money is available. I think part of it is making sure it's in front of you guys every quarter is another option. If you know of things that need to be taken care of, that this is another outlet for funding.
Great.
And I had a slightly different point,
Yeah.
which is that I had a call earlier this morning from an organization I'm involved in about this question. How do you keep your donors interested and feeling valued And I've certainly never, as a school committee member, reached out to the looters or the, Needham Bank or someone like that to say, I know they get thank you notes, but to say, this is really valuable, our program is growing, would you consider, donating more? I don't know if that's appropriate for a public school to do it. I assume it is at some level for somebody. But I just don't know whether that's ever figured into the thinking of anybody that, in fact, these people clearly value the work that's done here. Is that something that we ought to be thinking about?
Some of these individual things are spearheaded by the groups, like you said, the Needham Bank, the Metco is now
That's
sort
what I was
of,
thinking, that's
sort
that
of
parent
like
group, right?
Monique sort of
She does.
takes that and she knows that she has money that she can use to service the Metco population here. And that is, so she knows that money's there and she monitors that. She and Bill have been going to the presentations for the last 2 years for the checks, and so they know that's a good relationship there.
That's the word.
Challenge success,
Relationship.
yeah. The challenge success is sort of looked at from the guidance, and so they know that money's there, and they cultivate people that have been giving to that money, and they're making sure that money's used in the appropriate manner. Some of these other little ones have been here for so long, and they might have just been a random contribution that it would be in our best interest to find something to use it for.
$18 for the library, for instance.
Right, which is leftover.
I think
So
you
that's a
get
balance,
a week of the Globe for
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
2 weeks.
Thank you, Don, that's great. Next is the FY18 budget.
Yes.
Mr. McCullough.
Thank you, Claire. First on the agenda is the town warrants and intermunicipal agreements. So there's information in your packet. You've seen this information before in previous years. Same formats, different dollars, and a few different words. But they describe the capital plan, and the Dover Selectmen have approved and signed off on the IMA. The Sherborn Board of Selectmen are meeting next Thursday, and I'm sure that, I believe that they will certainly approve that and sign off. And so what I'm suggesting is that this item, any action in this item, table it for today. We'll put it on the February 28th agenda, at which time both boards of selectmen would have signed off, and then the committee can take your action to approve it, and then we'll have the original document here to complete all the sign-offs.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, and then the main attraction, continued discussion of the operating budget. Last Wednesday, you received electronically a series of documents which provided you with administration's further proposed adjustments. We're calling this version 2, and we provided for you tonight a hard copy of those documents. So what I'd like to do is spend just a few minutes walking you through the documents, getting into some specifics on some of the documents, and then just opening it up for questions and comments and feedback. And the questions, comments, and feedback, any direction that the committee, certainly as a whole, will give to us in terms of working with the chair in preparing and finalizing the presentation for February 28th, which will be the required public hearing on the proposed budget. So there were a number of documents. The first, though, if you just go through what was provided for you, go to the second page. This is kind of an executive summary, if you will, of the version 2.0 adjustments, but in particular, how the big pieces compare from version 2 to version 1. And there are some, the The changes which we'll go into in a little more detail. Since we last met, the governor's budget for proposed FY18 budget has come out, and you're all aware that comes out at the end of January. Part of that is Chapter 70 aid, education aid that goes to all municipalities and regional districts, and utilizing the same format that we did last year. May have been different in previous years. We have made an adjustment. We are using the governor's Chapter 70 numbers that are, what the governor does is plug in a big, 4-point-something billion dollar number, and then the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education actually takes that big number, applies the Chapter 70 funding formula, and breaks out that big number into each school district's proposed share. So that resulted in, between Chapter 70 and Chapter 71, a difference of a little more than $250,000 in revenue over FY17. So that's been factored in. Another big part of that, when we make that change, that proposed change, is that what comes along with the governor's, with the proposed FY18 Chapter 70 numbers, is typically a change in the calculation of the minimum local contribution amount, in this case for both the town of Dover and the town of Sherborn. And based on the new numbers, the MLC has changed. Version 1 uses the previous years, the budget that was voted, which actually last year reflected, again, the governor's proposed numbers from FY17. And those were adjusted. So based on that adjustment, Dover's minimum local contribution actually put a bit of a further version on Dover in terms of their assessment, and the opposite was the case for the town of Sherborn. And you can see those in details later on. We are proposing under, and so the bottom line is, as a result of that, the total member assessments have been adjusted based on that and some other proposals. So we're proposing using E&D to the tune of $137,290, and that is, at this point, strictly reflective of the additional Chapter 70 aid that we're receiving this year, which was the final, which reflects an additional amount in the final numbers that were approved by the legislature in June, that came in above the governor's number that was proposed at this time last year. The revolving account offsets have not changed. You see what the impact on the individual town assessments were as a result of these proposed changes. And based on these changes, you see what the difference in those assessments were. There was a reduction of $263,000 in the version 2 versus version 1 assessment for the town of Dover, and $323,000 for the town of Sherborn. And we'll get into the details of what those changes were. So if you go to the next page.
Can I ask a question just before you go?
Sure.
You mentioned E&D and its relationship to FY's.
Yeah.
17.
Did I not finish that thought?
No, you did. I just want to make sure it was clear that the money that's reflected here is going into this FY18 budget is because we were paid more than we expected to
Yes,
be. Okay.
in revenue.
Got it.
By that amount.
Yep.
Yes. It doesn't mean that at the end of this year, when we close out the budget, back to Michael's point, the question he was asking earlier, it doesn't mean that there won't be surplus, but that'll be part of it.
This is
This is the known
this is
the known-
This is
It actually is money.
versus-
Right.
unknown.
Right.
Right.
And again, assuming that expenditures at a minimum come in, on target.
Do you want questions at the end or as we go along?
Whatever you feel most comfortable about. I think if
it's related to this?
To what he just said, yeah.
What we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. So the one, may I ask a question about the governor's budget?
yes,
I'm trying to figure out the expected value. So what's the risk of that extra 254? So I know historically, sometimes we've been more conservative and used what was last year, which is really conservative, and sometimes, like last year, as you said, we used the governor's budget because we felt comfortable with using the governor's budget. Where on that risk spectrum are we for the increase on the 254?
so going back the last 7 years, the final Chapter 70 number was either equal to or greater in 5 of the 7 years than the government budget, and in 2 of those years it was less. So there is a bit of a risk there. There's no doubt about it.
Can we go offhand how much?
On the 250?
I don't have that worksheet in front of me.
It was what, Mike?
In the 3 years that I saw most recently where the governors didn't deliver, they came in on average 10% lower.
10% lower.
Below the governor's number.
So the 254 would be 225? Like
No,
10% of that?
No, the actual aid number came in 10% lower
Okay.
of the total. There were some significant differences in those years. I don't know what
But
the
it's-
budget situation had
it's, right,
degraded.
related to the political climate
Sure.
and who's in power, all kinds of other things play into.
All those years would have been a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature.
I'm just trying to gauge how,
Yeah, that was a good
how
question.
aggressive we're
Yeah.
being in taking the extra 254, or whether, what's the right amount of that? Obviously, we've gotten the administration's opinion, which is to use 100% of that potential increase.
Yeah, so the 10%, if I'm reading this correctly, the 10% is about
220.
220, yeah.
Right.
exactly. Right.
So we'll put that,
Of which,
just,
if all of it didn't happen.
So now we know.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's our range.
So my view on this further is that we're also projecting some additional Chapter 71 money. We don't know what that will be. Right now, it's running $21,000 ahead based on the second quarter. If I'm not mistaken, right? Is it about 21,000? I think that's what our revenue showed. That
Right.
revenue sheet.
Right, right.
Which again, just reflects the quarterly payment, so that will increase. But we also know that,
No, what we're showing is that's what's on the cherry, the final versus what we budgeted.
yes,
That's
Yes.
what that's
yeah,
reflecting.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
okay.
But I will say, I haven't had a chance to call the trustee and ask them, but our first payment was quite large. So I feel like, if you remember, we had a blip last year. So I think there's something going on with our transportation where we're gonna have a more favorable outcome than what we think.
The blip that led to the 137.
No,
No.
the blip that led to us not getting all of our money last year.
Transportation,
Different revenue,
transportation,
different
yeah,
revenue.
It's the
transportation.
transportation.
The 137 is
Yeah.
Chapter 70.
Because normally it's about half is what you get for your first payment. We get 217 if you look at your revenue. We get
Right.
217, so that, something's a little good about that.
It's in our favor.
It's in our favor.
So you have the, in your earlier report, a 21,500 favorable variance for Chapter 71.
Yes.
But then when I go to this, the E&D chart,
We're not-
it says it's 103,500.
Right, so that is, the difference there is, the $82,000 difference is the amount that we strongly believe we will receive at the end of the year when the final calculation is made, which are monies that are due to us from last year. And that's related to, we talked about this at a school
Yeah,
committee
we
meeting.
did.
The filing of the
Yeah.
end of the year report.
There was an issue with the filing of the end of the year report 2 years ago, right, 2 summers ago.
So,
Not this, over this past summer.
Right.
so in a prior budget, FY '15 or FY '16,
It would have been the FY15 closeout,
Right.
that state report.
we did not get as much Chapter 71 as we had budgeted.
Because of the filing.
Because we made a
Because of
mistake.
filing.
Right, so
Yeah.
we filed an amendment to that report, and that amendment should then give us the balance due to us, but we won't get it until June of this year.
Yeah.
And,
So that will all factor into our E and D.
yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
And when we close the books on 17, we'll have this,
Yes.
We'll have
Odd
an
blip.
extra.
Right, so,
that will show up on
right.
next year's actual report, so not to have an asterisk and all this.
So
Yeah.
using somebody else's words, the aggressive approach to using this year's the chapter,
Taking it.
governor's
value,
chapter
the
70
government,
Yeah.
money. You know, if in June, when the legislature adopts the final budget, if that number changes negatively, then there'll be an opportunity in June to know that there's money, additional funds that then can be applied to make up that shortfall if it's there.
If for some reason our aid for next year comes out, is finalized less than what we're now projecting, we're saying we have this extra 70 or 80,000,
That we have it accounted for.
but that's showing up now in our, but it is showing up in the C and D statement.
In this E and D
Correct.
example,
Okay.
right, but not in the
So-
budget process.
So we're working off of right now, after we account for the proposed use of 137,000 of E and D, a 4.4% balance plus any turnbacks in this year's spending, plus our extra parking
Yes,
money
Yes.
returns.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I
As an
think,
estimated.
right. And I think it's pretty fair to say at this point that if all of the expenditure lines went to zero, we still are projecting that $70,000 surplus in the salaries, you know, unless there's a long-term, you know, illness that
Unforeseen.
that unforeseen.
We have our substitute
Yeah.
balance that still
Right.
has a
Yeah.
nice balance
So-
that we cover.
So there is some room there.
So again, so if we had turnbacks of more than, looks like around 140,000 plus the
Right.
parking fund, then we would be in a situation of receiving back next year to the towns.
Yeah.
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 But we're too far out to know.
Right.
No, it's just,
Just to understand
Yeah.
what the.
since we have this
parameters
nice
are.
schedule.
Right, but we're on the first page, so.
But that's good, because I think that...
We go to the end and work backwards, I don't mind.
No, but I think that's
Chapter
helpful.
71 shows up all over these schedules.
But I think it's
Right, it
helpful
helps to
because it
understand
provides
it.
context moving forward in working through the other documents. So in terms of the specific adjustments that are being proposed, so we're on the summary of budget adjustment sheet.
This one?
It's-
In the memo?
Yep.
It would be the third page in the memo. It has the two blue solid lines, highlights at the top. So, you see in terms of you see the two revenue adjustments that we just talked about. And then in terms of the expenditure adjustments, you'll see that we have made some additions to the budget. So what we've added The first addition is the funding for the region share of the part-time administrative assistant position that was established last summer in the central office to support the special education administrator. This year, FY17, it's being paid with grant funds, but those funds will not be available next year. The second adjustment, and these are all the numbers in the black, we have added the 2 FTEs for the special education teachers that will allow us to expand the life skills program from to have one program that's currently at the middle school to create a high school program. And then the other FTE is to enhance the language-based program. We now have 15 students projected to be in that program next year. They're split between high school and middle school, if you remember from the last meeting, the discussion of this. So the additional FTE will allow us to have a devoted program at the high school as well as at the middle school. In both cases, we believe that there will be some ultimately some reductions on our district cost at the two, certainly in one local in Dover, because we know that there are students eligible, and we're pretty confident now that the life skills program at the high school will have a student there, and then it's very possible that we'll have students coming back for the language-based program as well. And so that's that. We have made an adjustment related to the realignment of the board certified behavior analyst position. Currently 2 part-time positions at the elementary level, realigning that to be a district-wide position with a 0.1 FTE allotted to the high school, to the region. And that's that cost prorated. The next line is the region share of a 0.2 ELL teacher, which was left out of version 1. So we've captured that. There is a 5th grader who will require a 1-to-1 EA moving up to the middle school. So we'll be adding a 1.0 EA, but we believe that there'll be additional in-district circuit breaker reimbursement for FY18 that will cover the cost of that EA. Very similar to what we're doing this year. We received for I think the first time, in-district circuit breaker funds to cover some of our in-district programming that meets the threshold. And so we'll be enhancing that and certainly eligible for additional circuit breaker that will cover that. And then the last increase is we did receive a final estimate, or not estimate, but a final amount for FY18 for our annual Norfolk County retirement contribution. And so we had to adjust the budget by $25,000. On the flip side of that, you can see the reductions. So we've learned through the grant process that we'll be starting to write a grant for the transition program, the BRIGHT program, that we can in fact request the first year funding of materials and some equipment and furnishings through that grant. That's a one-time piece. So we had accounted for that in the version 1, so we can now remove that. If we don't get the grant, the program isn't running, so we won't need that money. If we do get the grant will provide the funding for that. We talked last time about staff members who had indicated their intent to retire at the end of the year. They have met a required October 1st deadline, but they still had till February 1st to finalize their decision. February 1st has come and gone. 3 of the 4 retirees that had indicated interest are in fact retiring. So we've made an adjustment there. And we also know of a staff member who will be resigning at the end of the year and has informed us of that. So we've made an adjustment there. So those savings are in a couple of different lines because that's where they're budgeted. So the first savings is for regular education teachers who are retiring. So the net savings is listed at a little more than $57,000.
And I'll just say on that one, that's one retire and one resignation.
Okay.
So you don't add up and see for a retirement.
Got it.
And then,
Someone's
And
gonna
then
add
you
up and, I just want to get ahead of
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
so you can just go down the list. The next is for 2 other staff members, retirement savings there. And
Guidance down towards the
you have guidance further down. We have a revised estimate for the request under version 1 for new middle school science textbooks. Scott has worked hard with team leader and curriculum leader and fine-tuned that quote, so we can reduce that by $9,300. There was a request for a whiteboard. We actually can remove that from the list because we were able to recommission one that wasn't being used. We're deferring a wellness equipment request for a year. We can reduce the foods line item budget because we're not offering that next year. You see the guidance department savings. We are entering year 3 of our transportation contract. There are fuel surcharge language in there. The last 2 years, fuel prices have been very, very favorable. We've actually been getting credits as we've gone through the last 2 years and feel comfortable making an adjustment here for year 3. And then the last piece is a proposal to use E&D this year, in FY17, to pay off the last year, which would have been paid, which was budgeting version 1 for FY18 of a 5-year note that the region, it's actually a series of 1-year bond anticipation notes that get renewed every year. But that's the note that has paid for the middle school air conditioning project. So the last payment of $199,875 would be due in May of 2018. So our proposal is when we make the FY17 payment in May, we will prepay the FY18 amount, and therefore we can eliminate that charge, that expense from the FY18 budget. And again, the proposal is to use E&D, and that has led to the backup detail on the use of E&D is meant to provide some detail on what the impact might look like. So the bottom line is that the budget has been adjusted to $24,105,000. It represents a budget increase of $893,000. And you can see down below that how that breaks out in terms of the 2 towns' assessment relative to that, and the resulting difference and what the final assessment to Sherborn is. Dover's warrant's guidance was for a level services budget. We think effectively this budget is a level services budget. There are some additions, as we talked about, to enhance and improve services, above level services, and that has been, we'll go through the process that Dover warrant asks us to provide them with a written description of what that is. And we have essentially met Sherborn Advisory Committee's guidance of a level funded budget. You'll see that the assessment is at $137,000, but Sherborn Advisory has indicated to us that any increase in the health insurance benefits is held harmless from that level funding. And their estimated share of those benefits was somewhere around $160,000. So in fact, we are, that amount of money is a set aside. I guess that's the best way to describe it. So we're essentially at Sherborn's guidance of a level fund, for their level funded assessment, and certainly providing an FY18 budget that is level services with some enhancements. And I won't bother going through the details of the other sheets. I mean, you can go through those. The assessment sheet you've seen before, that just provides the nitty-gritty details of the numbers we just talked about. And then we provided a couple of sheets that come right from Jesse. These sheets that have some written notes on them. When you have a chance, go through those and follow through the written notes, and that will take you back to the specific Chapter 70 and Chapter 71 numbers that we've talked about. And then the last two documents, and then you have the revolving fund revenues. That's just a repeat of what we've seen before. And then the impact on excess and deficiency. We've kind of gone through that already, but certainly we can go back to that. And you know, these numbers are general estimates, certainly with some of them, but I think if nothing else happens, if there's no other changes to these numbers, in my opinion, it still leaves a very healthy E&D level. And then just for your interest, because we've been talking about this, provided a copy of the current policy on E&D. In reading through it, my observation is that at some point, and perhaps in the spring, it might be a good idea, it might be useful for the committee to review this, both for some clarification relative to the definition, and also relative to the part of it that is actually comes under policy, which I think might better be defined as like procedure.
Right.
And if you read through that, though, I might be missing something, but it seems to me the procedure doesn't really follow along with what the budget process, the timeline of the budget process. But I may be missing something there, but I think that's for further discussion. So I will stop speaking.
Any additional questions on school committee? Michael?
So, in this version 2.0, we have 4 favorable personnel changes from a budget standpoint. I was trying to follow the commentary in the original budget notes. So, how many additional retirements in FY18 are reflected in that version 1, and then how many occurred in FY17 that we didn't learn about until after the FY17 budget was finalized?
So I think there's only one that happened in 17 that we weren't aware of. So that's where you'll see savings in version 1. And then we had some hires that came in less than what we had budgeted. That's the majority of the positive salary variances that you see. We had people not retire but leave, and they were replaced.
So we still had,
Yes, we did have favorable, right.
so we had
Right.
2 leaves in FY17?
We had 1 retirement and 1 or 2 leaves. Two leaves. Yep. Yeah.
So we're up to seven,
Three,
Total.
four, yeah, seven,
seven
personnel
total
changes.
favorable from a financial standpoint,
right,
personnel changes
right.
that are reflected in the FY18 budget.
Yes.
And that's, for me, my memory, it seems like a very high number relative to what we've had been seeing.
Well,
We've had a couple of years where people
Yeah.
have left
Yeah.
for various reasons,
Right.
not necessarily retirements.
Right.
Yeah, I think the staff who have left and not retired, we can go back and look at that, but my recollection is that the transition from FY15 to FY16, we had more
Yeah.
staff leave than we did during the 16-17 transition. I don't know the exact number, but we did not have any retirements last year, except for the individual that decided to retire at the end of the year, versus the 3 this year. And what we had 4 indicating interest, so that indicates that, one of those 4, that decision is out there. My sense is,
So
Michael,
where I'm
Yeah.
going is that in understanding is the salary impact unusually favorable this year? Because what I added up from an operating standpoint is we're still growing 5.2%. And if that's in a year where we happen to have a lot of, again, financially favorable turnover.
But you have also unexpected hires that are also in fiscal year 17 budget that offsets. We were able to accommodate some of those. And so when you read we redid the big pages, it's net, most of them say net savings or net because there's multiple things happening on those line items. We had at least 2, I knew at least one at the middle school, a sped teacher that we had that we didn't know about. So that sort of goes against the savings that we had on one of the higher. I mean, there's a lot of it going in and out. But it's favorable to us because we've had to add salary expense and didn't give us a negative because we had the savings.
okay.
You've had
one
set
of
up
the
a caution
pieces-
for next year, but we should
Well,
be careful
I'm
not
just,
to.
again, I'm trying to sense if this was a normal year, how much higher would our salaries go? Because again,
We're hiding some
when
of
we
the
retain our
increase, right.
staff, we know that our salary growth rate's gonna be the COLA plus whatever percentage of our staff are at the 5%,
Yeah.
1.5% step piece
Right.
plus the
Right,
raise.
right.
And it's only if you have turnover of your most experienced people at the top steps that you get anywhere close to staying in, say, the 2.5% range for, what property taxes can be.
No, I think you're right. It's fair to say that turnover that is not retirement related, there's probably on average, there isn't much gain
Small.
or variance either way. But it's when you have the retirements. But I think that when we look at where our staff fall on the salary schedule now, my belief is that anecdotally, it appears that over the next 3 or 4 years, I would not be at all surprised if you're seeing some staff who are retiring in each of the next 3, 4, 5 years, where there haven't been a whole lot in the last few years.
May I ask a question about I'm just trying to find places where we might have been more aggressive versus conservative, just trying to poke holes and you can tell me, we're good. On the salary savings for the retirements, how confident are you that we'll be able to hire replacements at those savings levels versus not?
How did you determine?
Or how did you,
Right. So we looked at our recent hires and we didn't go really low. So we did like, middle of the range, but we also sat down with the administrators and walked through what our plans were and made sure they were comfortable that they could find a person in that range that would fill the spot that they needed to hire for.
I'm just
So,
thinking about the one
guidance.
surprise we had on the guidance at the middle school surprised us.
Right.
And I just want to make sure that we're not
Right,
getting
well,
at
that was someone leaving though, that we had, I don't think we had
She was
budgeted.
not that high up in the,
She wasn't that
Sure.
high up.
yeah.
anyway.
That's
you
fair
weren't-
point.
you weren't
So I mean, one of our
Right, and you-
concerns was guidance, and so,
Right.
we did have that conversation with John, he spoke with Ellen, we didn't lowball that one because we know what the community is looking for and we know what's gonna fit into that department.
Got it.
So I think there was a lot of thought put into where we budgeted for each of the new placements. Same with the new, the sped teachers. We want to make sure with their new programs, you're not going to hire someone to be one post.
Right. Okay.
That's good. Any other questions? Audience? That's good. Nod from everyone, that's good. We're not quite sure what to do with that.
Keep going, Claire. Keep going.
do we have any updates on healthcare?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say that next. I think
In my notes. So there's bad news and good news on health insurance.
At
So
least
the
there's some
rates,
good news, that's good.
there's news.
the rate, well, given the process that I observed over the last 2 weeks, it's good news as far as I'm concerned. But the bad news is that the West Suburban Health Group Board did set its rate increases for next year on Tuesday of this week. The Harvard Pilgrim Rate Saver, the Blue Cross Blue Shield Rate Saver Plan, and the Tufts Navigator Rate Saver plans are all increasing by 15%. The Fallon Rate Saver plans are increasing by 9%. 95% of our staff subscribe to either Harvard Pilgrim, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or Tufts Navigator. So that's the bad news. The good news is that going back a couple of weeks when some preliminary rates came out, it looked like the trend might be that the plan where we have a majority of our subscribers might go up 17%. And so that was worked on, and that's now, that came down. So based on that, the good news is that it didn't go up 17%, and we budgeted 15%. So while we were hopeful we could make an adjustment the other way, at least we, to our favor, or to the budget's favor, we won't at least have to make an adjustment the other way. And what's interesting about the health insurance is that the West Suburban Health Group, as you know, announced last year that the Rate Saver plan, which is the plan that's available to regional employees and town of Dover employees, both municipal and school employees, each of the 4 providers offer that Rate Saver plan, but that is going away effective July 1st, 2018. So there will be some work to do regarding what health insurance will look like beyond that.
And the time in which employees can elect to make a change is in the spring?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
In May, they'll have a healthcare fair where they can come and talk to representatives. Before that, they'll have information available to compare between the 2 plans or the multiple plans and decide if they want to make a change.
So what did rates do for retirees that are on the Medicare gap?
So those rates are calendar year rates. So they go from January 1st to December 31st. The rates beginning January 1st, we received those back in the fall. The increase was 8% for.
No, wasn't that, yeah, it was a little less, yeah.
About 7%. So we know that the rates for the first 6 months for half of the cost, that's set. We've estimated in our proposed budget, we're estimating an 8%
For the second
increase for the second.
Yeah.
And then with this uptick in the retirees, did you uptick plan additions to the,
No,
to the
because really what
OPEB
happens is
benefit?
your actives leave and go to become retirees.
Right, which is what,
So you're still in our count.
well, now that we're breaking it out though, now that we're breaking it out, we have 50,000 in plan changes for active employees,
Right,
which hopefully would accommodate the 2 new hires as well,
right,
in this,
right.
round of budget
Right.
changes. But then,
So,
we
right.
have, let's say we have 4 people retire,
Right.
we're hiring 4 more people. Where are you accounting? To me, it would be, you need to account for 4 more plan changes
So-
down in the OPEB pay-as-you-go.
Right, so a lot of, what covers us there is that throughout the year, we have people who are retirees, but they're taking the non-Medicare plans. There's a huge difference when they take Medicare and they pick up a supplementary plan. Those ins and outs covers us for what transpires, who dumps into the retirees from the actives.
right, so there's a number of moving parts. So throughout the year, we have retirees who turn 65
Yeah.
and are required to go to the retiree plans. So there's a net positive adjustment. We have active employees who make changes either way because of what's it called, life changes. So they're allowed to make a change outside of the annual change period. And so what Dawn has done is look back at that whole set of circumstances over the last 2 years, and that $50,000 is an average of that last 2 years trend. So it picks up the differences and also provides, which includes the new hires replacing retirees.
Right.
And we've been able to track that the last 2 years, even though, but, we have the one retiree from last year. So we had that experience last year, and then there were some retirees the previous year. So, again, it's an estimate, but it's,
And the other thing
There
is,
is a
it's
process
sort of
to
sad to
do
say,
that.
but then we do have retirees who
Yeah,
pass
that's
away.
fine.
And so that retirees, without having to worry too much about plan changes, sort of takes care of the ins and outs on their own, from my experience so far.
so we look forward to
February
the
28th,
discussion continuing on February 28th.
where we'll do our public hearing, and then the next night before advisory and warrant at Sherborn Town Hall. 7 o'clock, I believe, that one. The first.
Yes, it's
Your
7
meeting's
o'clock.
Mary are at 7?
Yes. The schedule
Went
items,
away.
yeah, it's,
Yeah, it's
we're
7.
scheduled from 7 to 8:15 that night. That's the schedule, I'm sorry. That was, Vicky input that out.
I'm sure you're right. Because you're off.
Not, so that closes out our FY18 proposed budget. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda, and I believe I'd like to move into this. Did we need to do anything on, no? That's just a notice? Okay. So that's the approval of the minutes, January 10th, 20.
Was this in your packet?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not on the agenda, so it's just a reminder.
Yes.
I think it got in the wrong order.
Oh, okay.
Should have been under communications.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The minutes of January 10th, 2017, and donations, which are winter coaches, I believe.
Sorry, I'm forgetting the procedure for this, but for me, it's pleasant just because I wasn't there for the January 10th meeting, so I feel like I should abstain and do my vote for the donations. So I think it's just to choose.
We can have two votes, that's fine. So we'll put a hold.
Separate them out. We just
Okay.
split them.
Any other concerns?
More of a clarification. So on the basketball coaches, it says to pay for some of our volunteer coaches, so I guess I'm confused.
It should say to
And
pay
we
for
all
two
volunteer.
volunteer coaches.
We all
No,
volunteer. Can we get
it-
any-
There certainly is an inconsistency with that phrase. It's like, it's kind of like required,
Yes.
required community service.
I think, John, I think the parentheses in
Yes.
middle, that's just where the check came from.
That's correct.
It just
Yeah,
looks a little misleading.
Right.
If someone were
Right.
to pull that out of our minutes.
Yes, I
Correct.
love meeting days.
I know, that's what at first I said, woo!
I know, I was like, wow,
Wow, they
they're
love
generous.
that.
So these are just additional
Then I
coaches
saw I had
that
the
get
check number,
compensated
so- Yeah.
and they're paid for
Yes, that's
Correct.
correct. Yeah, exactly.
by
So
volunteer.
if you remember, they, back in the day, they used to just pay the coaches from the parent fund, but we brought it all in-house,
Yeah.
so they're paid through our payroll.
Yeah.
And we give them money to cover it.
Right. Just
So, we-
every season we do this.
The donations
Really
to
no
pay for
volunteer.
your volunteer work. will be-
Well, I just, I just saw that opportunity.
For May.
Maybe that's one of Richard's retiring
Yes,
acts.
exactly, right.
We can start the new. So I'll invite a motion to approve the
Did express interest in fundraising.
donations for the winter coaches, boys basketball at $2,300 and girls basketball at
So moved.
$2,000. Second,
Second.
any further discussion? Those in favor?
It's also the cheerleading coach.
And then
Cheerleading.
Separate memo.
Sorry.
So the three, we can put those three together.
And I will add the
But that's,
cheerleading.
that one was clearly drafted, so there wasn't any questions.
Cheerleading coach for $1,200, Amy.
So we just include all that.
Yes.
Sorry, that was out of order in my packet.
Great.
Those in favor? So moved. All right, separately, a motion to approve the minutes of January 10th, 2017.
I think there's just, I think it's loiters, the name of the environmental donation is LEU, I think. Okay.
Based on what we saw from
Donna,
Donna?
I think Donna's is right.
It is
Oh, right.
LEUD.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, mine, otherwise,
Mine.
I'm happy to make one. in the minutes.
And second? Michael or Richard? Those in favor? And
Amy,
Carolyn's
I'm
abstaining.
there. Even though I trust you completely, I'm sure it's a completely yes.
And it's your option to vote or not vote?
Sure. I don't know whether we need to take this up or not, but there was a note in Mr.
Yes,
Smith's
I
report.
had
here about
just
Lewis
asked,
Yeah.
and just,
before we got to the consent agenda, I asked Bill whether we needed to do something on that, and he said, no, that's just
FYI.
FYI.
Perfect.
Good.
So we were thinking
Take my
alike.
autopilot button right now.
We were thinking alike.
You have a self-driving car.
Just to get a sense of upcoming attractions,
Yes.
I know back in December, we were pushing off having any of the financial people in
They're scheduled for our March 14th meeting.
March.
Right?
March 14th, yes, the
Okay.
auditors you're talking about.
So we have a March 1st with the financial committee, we'll have the auditors on the 14th.
Yeah, that'll be
March 14th is a regular March
regular
meeting.
March.
And then did we get any financial statements about West Suburban Health?
Yes,
That could be shared?
they just came,
Okay.
and we will share those with you, yes.
They were just approved at the meeting on
Okay,
Tuesday.
yeah.
And I just received them electronically.
Thank you. All right, next is communications. If you'll note, the Dover School Committee minutes of November 22nd and December 19th, and Sherborn School Committee minutes of November 15th and December 15th. And next meeting on the 28th, we will vote the IMA and do the public hearing. March 14th, the auditors, and probably the driving policy, we need to touch on that. And we have a joint meeting tentatively scheduled, I think, April 11th.
Yeah.
Before we adjourn, Richard.
Before we adjourn, one thing, I think I brought this up before, but my memory failed me. It's the question that is specific to the region, it's a policy question, but specific to the region, about our ability, which shocks me, to sign 20-year contracts.
Oh, right, that's with the policy
And I
committee too.
really, there are a few things I'm serious about, but this is one I'd actually like to make sure that this committee, A, changes its policy, but actually discusses in full what the right policy should be about signing long-term contracts.
Yep, that was the other thing. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. All right, motion to adjourn. Thank you very much. Thank you. Enjoy your evening.
Whoa.